Okay, so yeah, I have time right now, and so I'm seeing what, if anything, I can share, what wants to be shared. I'm feeling very just kind of empty. Anyways, I have so many ideas. Gosh, my brain is just not cooperating right now. So maybe I'll just sit. I guess I just want to sit. Maybe that's it. Oh dear. Yeah, I guess, I mean, one thing to talk about, one thing I've been thinking about is just um, being the light in the world, carrying the light into the world. And that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where, you know, that's sort of the what is the metaphor? Like the sand in the oyster that refines and polishes and rounds the pearl. That's what the world is. relationships, interacting with other people. It's like, how do you move through the world as the truth, as the light? And it's not straightforward. It's not always easy. It's like, but the more you heal inwardly, it starts to create a little bit more stability, solidity, not density, but a kind of stability in your consciousness, with your emotions, in your body. And right now I have this experience of doing delivery, doing DoorDash, Uber Eats, mostly DoorDash, and as a delivery driver. And you do whatever, 10, 15 deliveries a day, or maybe more, I'm not sure, I'd have to count. But it means you're having these sort of discrete, small, bookended interactions with people, mostly with the people that are working in restaurants and fast food service industry. Most of the people you deliver to, you just drop at their door, but so you have just these kind of discrete, brief moments, interactions. And it's interesting. Everything is fodder for the process of healing and waking up. And it's good to have kind of an experimental disposition, allowing yourself to fail, to try things out, and I think that can be really healthy. But not everybody that you meet is a saint. Have you noticed that? I mean, they are on one level. We all are. But there's a lot of just confused people, confusion inside of all of us. And just humanity being human. And you just come across, I'm not sure the right way I want to say it, how I want to say it, but a lot of just grumpy, condescending, hostile, unkind, disrespectful people. I mean, certainly not everybody, but in the course of many deliveries, interactions during the day, probably at least one or two people that are, just, I guess unkind would be a word for it, or disrespectful, or you also happen to come across some real, angels and people where you just, hey man, how are you so kind, so sweet, operating in this environment here on this planet Earth? So that's also true. There's also grace happening. And everything in between, right? The full spectrum of humanity. And it's interesting, dealing with those interactions. And it's a good kind of testing ground. I don't know if testing is the right word, but a good place to kind of experiment with staying in your body, staying rooted, staying whole, staying intact, being honest. Yeah, and so I've had some interactions where I've spoken up, I guess set an energetic boundary, kind of just, yeah, I mean, it's just hard because it's so situational. It's like some people are just in a bad mood, and sometimes you don't, and they're projecting it outwards, and you don't want to take that on. It's not yours to take on. And so you're kind of put in these positions of like, how much do I speak into this right now? Do I confront this? Sometimes you can kind of just see through it and see kind of the that it's not personal. It's never really personal, but just saying that and kind of intellectually tacking these sort of truisms, like don't take it personally, just saying that doesn't really satisfy sometimes. We tend to transmit, we're all transmitters of our state of consciousness. And so when you're moving through the world, you're kind of always presented with these situations, circumstances and choices of how am I going to respond to projections, to negativity, to hostility, to condescension, to disrespect, to grumpiness, and it's an ongoing balance. It's like an ongoing interactive process, because you don't want to be so primed and so hyper vigilant about every interaction that you're stressed going into it, and then that colors your reaction and you feed into reactivity. And you also don't want to be so detached and so desensitized and so checked out that you're just kind of not reacting at all to human interaction. And it's like you can be so kind of defended and detached. It's a kind of defense mechanism that nothing really touches you, but then you kind of cut yourself off from your actual vitality, your own emotional state, your own vibrancy. So again, it just becomes a question of how do you live this truth out? How do you stay honest, humble, kind, settled, respectful to yourself and to other people? And you don't get it right often, and you fail a lot in doing this, but it's a good kind of experiment for a lot of us to run, is how do you confront people? How do you talk to people? And I can say sometimes, somebody's disrespectful or unkind or just acting shitty towards you, and you don't do anything. And you're able to kind of work it out maybe later that night when you come home in meditation, dropping in, letting those energies, that discomfort, that dis-ease, letting that energy process through. That's definitely a valid way of doing it. And sometimes that's what happens. Sometimes you can be so caught off guard by somebody's energy that you just don't know how to react, so you don't really react. It takes a while to come out of that shock, out of that freeze. And again, you do the best you can, and you can work some of that stuff out after the fact when you feel safer, or you're able to relax. But you can also take a more active role, I've noticed. In a couple senses, you can be more actively respectful towards other people and towards the world around you. You'd be surprised that that does change the dynamic often. You know, if I'm really settled and in a good place, I can just go into just about any environment, it seems. And you stay rooted. Yeah, some of these places, these fast food restaurants, they're just such chaotic environments, physically, in terms of the noise, in terms of the people moving around, in terms of the personalities, in terms of the energy. They can be just really kind of disorienting, chaotic places. But you can walk in as the truth, you can walk in as the peace. You know, this is kind of silly, but just to make it concrete, you know, somebody, you walk in and maybe they start talking to you from across the room, and the person behind the counter, I really, more and more, I'm more and more of a quiet person. I don't really like to yell and to talk, and and so this is maybe almost too specific, but yeah, sometimes I'll walk into a place just calm and still, and somebody will start, you know, talking across the room, and I just won't respond, not in a cold way, but I'll just kind of stay focused and wait until I get physically closer. You know, just take your time. You don't need to rush. It's like you don't need to buy into the energetic frame that you find yourself in. You can bring in a new energy. You can bring in a new peace. And you don't have to be reactive just because somebody is, you know, I want to say barking at you. That's not quite the right way to say it, but so you just kind of walk up, you take your time, you walk up, you look at them, you know, in a calm way, you make eye contact, and also people are, yeah, we're just constantly running around. We're kind of in these trances and these dazes of working and going a million miles an hour. But that doesn't mean that you need to take that on. You can understand all of that. You don't have to judge it, but you don't have to take that on. And that can be really powerful. So you walk up to somebody and instantly they're, you know, saying whatever they're saying. You know, what do you need? What are you here for? What's the order? And you just energetically feel, if you jump right into that stream of energy that they're in, you're going to get, you know, it transmits. It's like you can kind of put yourself into a trance. So you kind of just stay open. And what I tend to do, what I've been doing, is just when I get up there, no matter what's going on, I just look at them in the eyes peacefully and I say, how are you doing? How's it going? You know, just something nice, simple, straightforward. Even if they're asking me, you know, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing DoorDash? Who are you here for? What do you want to order? Whatever. I always try to start out just with a calm, how are you doing? And it's interesting because it just sort of opens up the space. Not always, but quite often. And either way, you just stay rooted. You stay where you're at. You bring in the peace. You bring in a new energy. And often, you know, people will pause, kind of have a moment of pausing, and we'll say, good, good, thanks for asking, or how are you doing? And that can just kind of change the energy, something that simple. So that's kind of a more proactive thing, is you just kind of bring in the peace, you be the peace. And regardless of what's going on around you, you stay centered. Now sometimes it's not at all the majority of the times, it's a minority of the times, but sometimes people are just outright rude and you're not having it. And so sometimes I'll say after an interaction, or even right then and there, if I'm getting, that kind of just whatever negative energy, I'll say to somebody, I'll ask them, I'll say, are you open to feedback? Yeah, I think that's what I'll say, something like, yeah. Hey, are you open to feedback right now? And making eye contact, looking at them, staying rooted. And that already kind of can break a trance, can break a spell. There's always kind of a surge of adrenaline because you're confronting this energetic pattern of whatever, that you're doing something out of the ordinary. So that's the experimental aspect of this. And I'm not saying this is like the formula or something like that. I'm just saying these are my thoughts, the ways I'm experimenting with it. And so yeah, are you open to feedback? Generally speaking, people will be kind of shocked, and you can sometimes feel the energy shift just with that. People don't like to be put on the spot or to be called out, but it sort of fundamentally is about self-respect. And the thing is, when you're confronting somebody, when you're breaking into a pattern of disrespect, or you're breaking into an energetic pattern that's coming at you, you don't want to feed it. And see, it's like you can go off course either way. You can be too much of a doormat, and you can be too aggressive. This is where the art of it comes in, and this is where you have to be patient, and you have to have an experimental attitude, and you have to be willing to say, I'm just doing my best. I'm trying something out here. I don't feel good being disrespected, and I also don't feel good being overly aggressive and attacking somebody. Although, yeah, there is a place for being a little bit more aggressive sometimes, but and so it's sort of a third path, you could say. It's neither of those polarities. It's just it's a strong presence, and you'll say, are you willing to get some feedback right now? And they typically, I found, people will say yes, and I'll say, and I've learned to say, I've learned through doing this that I'm not always right, that my interpretation of events is not always right, but I've also learned that I'm not always wrong, and that my intuition energetically is something to respect and to listen to, and not to gaslight myself. But because of that uncertainty, when you enter into kind of confronting somebody, it's important to have some basic humility. And so I'll usually start out by saying, have I done something to offend you? Have I done something to upset you? And asking them that. And I'll say, and sometimes I'll say, if I have done something to offend you, please forgive me. But usually when I ask that, they'll say, no, you haven't. And I'll say, okay, well, I want to I'd like to let you know that you're coming across very hostile right now. You're coming across very rude. you're coming across hostile. Or, try to keep it simple, not a lot of not a lot of words, just direct and to the point. Again, as you get more, it's never really that comfortable, but as you get more comfortable, the more you do this, the more kind of consciousness you have while doing it, more resources, inner resources you have, and a little bit more control. It's easy to these things can get messy, but so you don't want to be raising your voice, you don't want to be energetically attacking, you just want to be contained. It's like you become still. You're moving from that stillness, but there's a force behind it. And you say, have I done something to offend you? No. You're coming across hostile right now. You're coming across rude. And you can kind of pause, give a little bit of space. Usually, every now and again, somebody will be very receptive and surprise you and just be like, wow, I apologize. and be humble. And that's really a remarkable thing to witness and to be a part of. And you can feel the dissipation of the hostility, of the negative energy. You can just feel it in your nervous system, in the energetic field. You just feel that calming and that healing. Not often, there's just kind of reactivity that you have to expect is going to happen. And you don't fight with it. If, they're saying, that's not how I am, or whatever, if they're denying it or just being hostile, you don't engage with that. You stay centered, you stay calm, stay locked in, and you say, again, you express what you had to express. You're being hostile, and you can then just say, I'd appreciate, from this side of the counter as a customer, as somebody coming into the business, I'd like to feel more welcomed. I'd like to feel, at a minimum, respected or kindness. I've started to say, because you cycle through a bunch of different restaurants, but you end up going into some restaurants and places with some frequency. And so you definitely don't want to just, that's another kind of parameter or boundary. You don't want to just energetically torch a place to the point. You're looking for, like, your inclination is, first of all, to be respectful to yourself and to your feelings and to, your mental health, your psychology, your emotions, your spirit. But you're also it's not a domination oriented. It's not like you're trying to win. It's like you're trying to transform a situation, is what your kind of orientation fundamentally is. Primarily, you got to watch out for yourself, take care of yourself. But sort of secondarily and mixed in with that, you are trying to transform the interaction and the energy. You're not trying to create more enemies or make it harder for you in the future to go into some place. But sometimes you do have to speak up and set a boundary. And if you're even attempting to do this stuff, it's already such a courageous and, I'll say, unusual, out of the ordinary thing that you're doing. So give yourself some grace if it doesn't go perfectly, and it rarely does. But yeah, you're kind of walking through all these different possibilities and just trying to stay focused, trying to, just be solid, be strong. And you express what you have to express, and you say, I'd appreciate a kinder interaction. I'd appreciate a, less hostility in the interaction. I intend to come back here, and I'd like to come back here, and I'd like for there to be a kinder, or however, you'll find the way to say it. The simpler, the better, the fewer words, and you feel into the moment. You have to feel into the moment where they're at. And sometimes you find that this is just not a good person to be around. You have to be open to that possibility. But even then, if you've gone in there, if you've spoken your piece, if you've been humble and kept the door open to transformation, kept the door open to apology, to forgiveness, to gaining an ally, gaining a friend, gaining, if you've had that kind of humility going into it, and honesty and integrity, it's really about integrity on another level, or on one level, on every level, then you might decide, I don't want to interact with this person anymore. I tried in a really humble way, direct way, kind way, respectful way to express, to engage, and they just were not having it. They were hostile, they were attacking, they were immature, whatever it is. You can walk out feeling like your head is held high, or you can walk out with your head held high, feeling intact, even a sense of dignity, of buoyancy. And it also safeguards against the need. See, we have this culture of talking to the manager. Let me talk to the manager. That kind of thing. Or gossip, bad-mouthing people, or flaming people in the comments, or flaming people in their Google reviews or whatever. And I find if you're willing to just step into the fire and speak directly to somebody, say, you know what, you can't speak to me that way, energetically, or even sometimes verbally, you have to say it that strongly. But if you're willing to do that, you tend not to really need to talk to the manager, or to gossip, or to badmouth, or the resentment. It's cleaner. It's like it's a cleaner. It leaves less residue. Again, you can really do a lot on your own to work through these things and find where it's hitting inside of you, and to kind of heal those places. Yeah. Had another interaction with somebody who was being very, well, yeah, I don't think I need to go into more specifics. But, hopefully there's some broader things you can extract from sharing like this. Because it's not really about me. It's not really about these particular interactions. It's not really about if you're doing DoorDash or something like that. It's about integrity, personal integrity. It's about how to interact, how to bring more light into a situation, how to confront people in a way that is potentially transformative. And it does happen sometimes, where I think both people just feel, again, it's Christ in Matthew chapter 8, I think it is, in the Sermon on the Mount, where he talks about, if you have a grievance with a brother, go to the brother, talk to them directly. I can't remember the exact language, but I think it says something like, if you gain them, or I can't remember how they put it, but sort of like, if it works, if you transform the situation, then that's all you need to do, really. But anyways, so I hope there's some broader, And it's all contextual, it's all situational, who you're talking to, the level of consciousness of the person you're talking to, if you choose to engage or not. I mean, that can be another trap, is feeling like I have to address every slight that's thrown at me. And that's not the case. That's just not practically possible. But it also kind of puts you in this hypervigilant state of like, I have to keep this my pure aura, my pure vibration or something like that. And that kind of perfectionistic approach is bound to fail and bound to create a lot of stress. And so sometimes, and the more you do it, the less you need to do it, you find. You can kind of just let things go. Because you start to see, once you scratch under the surface, a lot of people don't like being confronted, and so they kind of collapse, or maybe just snaps them out of whatever trance they were in. And but yeah, I mean, it can be really healing also to be able to and to be willing to put up some energetic boundaries. And like I said, it's contextual to how much you know this person also. If you're going to be seeing them every day, if there's value, you know, sometimes it's not even worth it to talk, to bring something up. But if it's somebody that you know, really value, it might be worth it to confront almost isn't the right word, but to bring stuff up. And again, it's kind of the same principles of that stillness. It's not attacking, it's not retreating. It's this kind of middle path, middle way. It comes from there's like an inner courage to it, an inner dignity to it, but it's not exactly oppositional. Let me see if there's anything else I want to say about that. You know, and the other piece of that, after I'd been doing that and I've had some, you know, and I've done it wrong, I've had to go back and apologize sometimes. One time recently, because I felt like I overplayed my hand and I got just ruffled and things got just kind of sideways. I didn't do the best job. So I have, you know, apologized sometimes after the fact. So that's a possibility too. But if you're willing to give that kind of feedback in a negative sense, or, you know, kind of reflect back the energy that somebody's throwing at you, you know, you might at some point, it might be useful practice to, are you giving positive feedback? Are you letting people know, like, hey, I appreciate your customer service, appreciate your energy, I appreciate, you know, kindness that you're showing. It's really helpful, it's really nice, you know. It's kind of rare, or, you know, however you want to say it, you know, positive feedback. And again, be simple, and you don't need to like give 2 paragraphs or something, but, you know, just to let people know that you appreciate the work that you're doing. Because I think we are sensitive creatures, ultimately, on some level. And see, if a fear I have in sharing stuff like this is it sounds overly precious or like putting too much emphasis on something. But, I think the fact of the matter is we are energetically sensitive beings. And often you find when people say, just let it go, just get over it, they may be doing that superficially, but often, maybe not always, but often you find that you may find that person or that's sort of a defense mechanism. How do I want to say this? A lot of us are stuffing our emotions, and so and you can feel it energetically if somebody, is saying, just get over it. You can often kind of sense that they may be able to do that sort of momentarily, but they're drinking a lot of alcohol, or they're very emotionally high-strung, or there's some kind of avoidance pattern there. So again, it's personal work, really. You don't have to worry about what other people say about it. If it's important to you, it's your path. And you don't have to invalidate yourself or deny what you're feeling. You don't have to overindulge it either. So there's always a balance. But a lot of people are actually stuffing their emotions and are not in a healthy place. And so if you're out there struggling and experimenting and trying out different ways to be in the world and to bring light into the world, it is kind of messy. But if it's coming from an honest place, then you're moving in the right direction. So anyways, I don't think I really articulated that last part very well. But peace.